That is, and I think that one of the good symbols of this question this week was a New York Magazine cover. And the New York Magazine cover was from some right-wing inauguration party, certainly not as cool as the Passage Press party that you threw, but it did look cool. And it was this kind of this large format, high-angle picture of, you know, young. They cropped out the 3 black people in the frame, so it was like young, you know, attractive, conservative, MAGA kids dressed in tuxes and suits and drinking, and it was kind of this glittering, almost. It gave me a kind of a 1920s feel, which was really cool. And then there were these other close-up shots that the photographer had lit from underneath with a flashbulb underneath to make them look kind of grotesque and frightening, but it actually just gave them a bit more stylization. And so let's say like the middle argument on this image was, the title was "The Cruel Kids Table," like a play on the idea of the cool kids table. Like, it looks cool, but they're actually bad people. That's kind of the dumb argument that is the basis of most kind of progressive thought over the last 10 years. But right-wingers looked at it and they said, actually, no, this is just cool. We are young, we're attractive, we're aesthetically appealing, we're throwing great parties. This is no longer, grandpa's, country club conservatism. This is the kind of new right depicted in this cover. And even when they attack us, they can't help but make us look cool. Was that your take, or was that part of your take? How did you look at this? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good to look cool. Like in our event, I'll just say too, we had these, it was featured in GQ, and there are these pictures of us in our tuxes drinking champagne and having a good time. And it's like, it's young, attractive people on the right having fun. It's not like your stuffed shirt, sort of like think tank party. It's something totally different. Unique to the right, at least in our lifetimes. And this is great. These images are great and they're incredibly powerful. And this also coincides with, I don't know if you saw, James Pogue wrote a 10,000 word or more piece for Vanity Fair. And it was like, what happened to the Democrats? And it's Pogue's long form sort of journey throughout the Kamala Harris, Tim Walz campaign, going to these different Democratic functions and a few right-wing functions and doing this sort of like compare and contrast. Vanity Fair, of course, is no friend to the right, but in this piece, Pogue describes, being at this Democrat party, and it's like this, he describes this fat young man like sweating in this black suit, like this grotesque image, insisting that it's cool to care about democracy, and he's like, put that in your article. What's cool is caring about the integrity of our democracy. Yeah. And then you juxtapose that
trans kids are the coolest thing ever. Right? Yeah.
So you're just picturing this like slovenly guy in a suit sweating, saying that to James Pogue at the Democrat Party, and then that's juxtaposed with this like glittering, glamorous image of the right wingers. This is great. Okay. And it's true. Okay. This does like map on to the reality of how young people are now participating with politics and these different coded sort of social and cultural scenes. The problem is, and you pointed this out, I think in a tweet, I think it was your tweet, that we can't rely though on Vanity Fair and New York Magazine to be the ones to tell us that this is what's happening, and to like formalize in the public conscious that what's cool is what Vanity Fair and New York Magazine even unwittingly tells you is cool, and what they tell you is cringe and boring is what's cringe and boring. The right, if we're going to have any kind of sustained cultural power, has to have our own, again, self-authorizing cultural institutions. Obviously, this is something we're trying to do, with Passage. But yeah, how does that work? Like, how do we reclaim not just being cool, but the ones who get to say what is and is not cool, what is and is not high status, etc.?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, look, the cultural right is ascendant, but it's still not crystallized into anything concrete. And the left has given us an opportunity. The left forfeited status, forfeited prestige, forfeited aesthetic beauty, forfeited, most of the kind of the media production industries. Like, with your passage publishing, you're sensing an opportunity that when they started doing sensitivity readers at the Big Five, when they started, kind of policing all of the, young adult fiction, even for kind of faux pas against the kind of woke consensus, they're creating an opportunity for us. But it's not clear that we can seize it, and it's not clear that we can produce that kind of cultural comment ourselves. And eventually, Vanity Fair is going to get bored or envious, or their hatred will spring again, and they'll start just doing nothing but smear pieces like they had been previously. And so the question is, can the right do this? And I see that even in the journalism field, certainly in the arts and culture field. I can rattle off a dozen writers at the New Yorker, the New York Times Magazine, Vanity Fair, whatever, that even like taking all the ideology out, taking all of the kind of true false out, just the craft of it is very skilled, very high quality. We don't have an equivalent roster on the right quite yet. And then we don't have the publications that can convey that, right? And so I know I'm trying to do that in my small way. I think City Journal, where I am writing, can be a venue for long form commentary pieces, but it's more of a policy magazine. What we need beyond that is these culture magazines. I think what you're doing is very important. I think what Mark Granza is doing at IM 1776 is very important. But the kind of modal right-wing influencer is still cat turd, is still the kind of partisan boomer slop that just like goes for the kind of algorithmic maximization. There's no care on aesthetics. One of the things that came out simultaneously as this cover was this like ultra right beer calendar. I don't know if you saw this. It's like a right wing beer company. They put out a calendar with like right wing babes, and it was just so bad. It's like the lighting, the costume, the design, it's like really bad, like high school kid photography. That is like, it's like, this is not going to take us to that place that we need to go.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like special pleading here because I have this like company. We have these media properties. We have books and magazines, and we're starting in video media as well. And so like what I'm going to say is, we need money. Give us money. Give me a bunch of money so I can start cultivating some talent and start experimenting with some of these projects. And if you're rich and on the right and you care about this stuff, you should be putting money into culture. I'm not the first person to say this, but that's part of the equation. And the right has not quite figured this out yet. Not just to put money into it, but to do it smartly. And like, I believe in capitalism. These things have to be able to float on their own. So we don't want to just like subsidize these things and start a bunch of nonprofits. Like these products, if they're doing well and making good content, they need to be self-sustaining, but they also need capital to get kickstarted. And it's a different kind of investment that you're making, even if you're making money, when you invest in a 10,000 word piece that a writer puts together over the course of 6 months. That's really expensive. And it's going to, take up 30 pages in your magazine. The return on that is negligible in terms of dollars that brings to your magazine, but you still need to be willing to make that kind of expenditure and that kind of investment in craft if you're ever going to get those writers who, by the way, a lot of them are ideological mercenaries. I know there's this idea that artists are like politically on the left. It's not really true. Most artists just want to tell like good stories, and they're going to do what they have to do to make that happen. We can recruit a lot of these people. So I want to make that pitch. Okay. If you're listening to this, like send me a DM, let's talk. Okay. But also, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say about this. Curtis Yarvin had that piece in the New York Times. They did this big interview with him over the weekend, this big video series. Did you see this?
Yeah.